Hello there and welcome. And as you can see, I am here with the world champion. It is Lovenest. Hello, Lovenest.
Hello, Matt. Good to see you. Hi, guys.
So Lovenest was out partying last night, celebrating his victory and also his graduation. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the town threw me a party. They celebrated me with like banners of WCS 2019. It was amazing. It was amazing. Like the mayor came
All the
and
little munchkins as well, and their
yes,
lederhosen, and then obviously the sacrificing of the bull. Uh,
yes, red carpet, everything. It was amazing.
Okay, so the format of this interview should be quite interesting for you guys. We're going to very briefly go through like Lovenet's kind of overall tournament history, his introduction to the game, and what made him in the player he is today. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a more of a deep dive into the World Championship, the matches he played, and of course his ultimate victory. Spoilers alert, obviously. Well, it is the kind of interview with the champion. Um, so Lovenest, just before we start, how did you start playing Company Heroes, and also what mentality did you have towards the game in terms of making yourself a decent player?
Mm, so I started playing Company Fears in like actually it was my brother. He played Company Fears 1 and he gifted me a copy of Company Fears 1 and I played the campaign and I absolutely loved it. And around that time Company Fears 2 was already released, I think. And I played the campaign and I just liked the system. And I started playing competitively when I accidentally watched, I think it was SNF5.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, I think it was Barton versus OMG Pop in the final.
That's right.
Yeah, so I watched that and I thought like, damn, Company of Heroes is a huge, uh, has a huge tournament scene, and I actually started practicing then. Like I took it more seriously, and I started to improve my play and learn from mistakes. And yeah, but that was actually like seeing Army and like the casts, they were pretty inspiring.
So there we go. On the 26th of January 2014. So, a good nearly 6 years ago now, you saw that famous cowbell intro to SNF, the ding ding,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and the distorted guitars, and Ami Pullet Siphon going crazy, all leading to Barton winning with his Zis guns and his flaming KV8 tanks, etc. It's kind of
Yeah.
exciting to watch. So, cut to now. By September 2015, Lovenest, you're a seeded player in the Operation Charlie Fox finals. How on earth, in a year and 9 months' time, do you go from being a campaign scrub to being a finalist in a tournament?
Yeah, I just took it very seriously, and but I, but I like judging from my play back then, I think I wasn't at the level yet. But that's kind of common, isn't it? Like you see those players who eventually win a tournament, they end up playing in these other tournaments, and they never really reach that, like, go that far.
No. So obviously, I was about to say you're not at an elite level yet, getting beaten by OMG Pop 2-1, and then Devem, who obviously turns out to be a bit more of an adversary later on,
Hmm.
2-0 in the losers bracket. All I'm asking though is it that the player pool wasn't quite as strong back then, but how come you had the tools to get so good in a year and 9 months time? Had you played much RTS previously? Had you perhaps critically assessed what makes you good at the game, and like what were your tools to make you that good that quickly?
Hmm. I think, yeah, I've played RTS previously. I played a lot of Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne, which is probably my favorite RTS, next to CoH2. Yeah, I played that quite competitively. Like I never really played in tournaments, but back then I was like 16 or so. Yeah, I played that quite competitively, and in general, like I don't know if you know the game, the tabletop game Stratego.
Okay,
Do you know that? Do
sounds
you know
very
that?
German, but carry on.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's actually like turn based, and it's kind of like a mini RTS. It's really damn fun. And yeah, I
I'm
when
gonna
I played that
Google the
against
crap out of that.
my yeah, you should do that. It's a great game, and yeah, I played that versus my family, and I always wanted to improve my play, and Yeah, it's quite funny because it actually has kind of a fog of war system where
Really?
you can't see your enemy. Like the figures, like the models, they are turned in a way so you don't know what they are. So you have to do scouting and stuff like that. As you can see, like you can see your units, but you can't see the enemy units. Like they're hidden. So you have to like do scouting. You have to like probe attacks, and then you have to capture the enemy flag. It's kind of like a victory point in that sense. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a great game. And yeah, I think all of these factors, they accumulate, and then eventually with Company of Heroes. And yeah, I also played like handball, which is pretty big
Nice.
here.
So you basically, from formative years, you were always developing your brain. You were playing strategy games and playing RTS games at a very early age as well.
Mm.
And then I think, as I say, I think you came into the game at an interesting time where the pool was okay. There was like Jezulin, Barton, OMG Pop, but it perhaps was a good time to get your foot in the tournament scene. But then you really
Yeah.
built on that. And of course, we're going to skip through the ESL stuff. Well, we don't have to actually. Let's just go over to that very quickly. In early 2016, like you weren't the highest seed for ESL, but you pretty much ended up dominating on that first weekend. Do you remember much about that, beating Barton and Paul AD at the time? Like, do you remember
Yeah.
feeling like I feel improved now? I feel like I'm dominant now.
I think when they announced the whole cup system, I think I was excited. I was really excited. And I wanted to play, and at that time, I think Jesselin was kind of he was a little bit fed up with the game. I felt like, and
Mm.
I tried to take the chance and like establish myself as a good player. And like the whole series, like they didn't really generate much hype, but the format itself was amazing to like
Yes.
practice and do it on a regular basis, and like um, develop a cool head in tournament situations. Like the more you play these things, the more they become like, I don't know, second nature. That's like a little bit exaggerated, but you
Yeah.
you get used to the setting, and that's like a huge factor for tournaments. Like you have to play well, obviously, but also
Well,
you have
that's the
to
way
like
I've always classed it. It's like we've got a pre ESL kind of tournament scene and a post ESL tournament scene. And to have practiced in most of these tournaments and to have played your hardest, it really gives you a strong footing. And of course, you thrived in that environment, whereas other players didn't. So I think it really set you up quite well. We also have, unfortunately, that for you at least, the Warpaint Championship later that year just didn't go your way.
oh
Um,
yeah, definitely. I'm not sure what. Yeah, that was a little. Maybe I went into that a little bit too overconfident. But I don't even remember what exactly happened there.
I think
But
you got beaten by Theodosios in the fight. It might have just been. It was only two qualifier finals. Maybe you
oh yeah,
just
right. Yeah,
quite weren't.
Theodosius, he was good. He yeah, there was on. I remember the games on Crossroads, and he played USF, and I played Verma. Oh, that yeah. I don't know. There was definitely like a little bump in the road.
Yeah, a little bump in the road. But certainly in that year, you definitely established yourself. And then the tournament scene died, and we all had to do a famous Kickstarter, and it went crazy. There were a lot of sleeper fans. They invested, and we ended up with the Grand Championship Series. And
Hmm.
I think we must have had an interview before where we went through these matches, so we won't talk through them at length. But we all know how it ended. It ended pretty damn well for yourself. You know, we all met in person. We had a good time. And then a year later, of course, we did GCS2, which was pretty much marketed using your face having won GCS1. and,
I love
and
seeing those pictures from the different players. Like, it's so much fun. Like, it's just amazing, and especially in a live environment, it's cool. Like seeing all the people, and that was definitely like a huge motivation too. Like when in the end of wasn't it with Warpoint Championship that they invited the finalists to
it
Vancouver?
was, yeah. And
And I was so sad when I saw that. I was like, oh man, I should have I wanted to go there. And
yeah.
then the opportunity with GCS came up, and I was like, I'm not gonna uh yeah, let that slip away.
And then a year later, we did it again, this time on a much bigger scale. More people, 8 players in total, flown over to Manchester in a studio with better audio quality and all that kind of good stuff. And there's an arrow kind of pointing to us discussing your matches. We did a lot of that, you and I, between your games. take pride in making sure the players feel like they are, they can concentrate and they can get away from everybody. And there's you and I talking between.
Do you see the guy with the I forgot his name, but in the parachute, like in the uniform with the helmet.
Yes, I still can't remember his name. I think he may have like been time chronosphered there, teleported or something. It's like he was lost. He thought it was a genuine war.
He was never seen again afterwards. Yeah.
Interesting video I want to show everybody. I never realized how good this was, but this is the only video because the Sega video files got corrupted, unfortunately, when they sent them me. This pretty much shows you the whole setup. There's Jesulin having been interviewed. Tightrope being the kind of assistant apprentice kind of assistant, passing everybody the microphone. There's VonIvan. There's the crowd in inverted commas. There's a lot of people behind the veil, obviously.
I love how the cameraman just like creeps behind.
It's George, actually. I think this is George. Yeah. Oh no, the Sega cameraman. Yeah, that guy was. There's Stormless watching it all.
I love the studio. Yeah.
It was cool, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole feed through. It doesn't really feature you, but that was just to give everybody an impression of what it was to be at a live tournament event. Very briefly, we've never actually spoken about this on YouTube or whatever, Love Nest. But we've got our games against Talisman in the winners bracket final from that event, Crossroads, and of course Fame and Ville approach. And then, of course, we lead all the way. You come back through, having faced Jesulin into the grand final. What are your overall thoughts on that looking back? And just give us a little bit of a feeling for how you look back on that event and what it was like to play in those games.
I think I was very, like, after the first two series, like against Refero and Helping Hands, I felt quite good about myself. Like, I thought I can take this. So I wanted to go straight. Didn't want to go the detour through the losers bracket. I wanted to go straight into the final. And and I actually won the first game against Talisman. I was like, I'm gonna take this, yeah. But Talisman, unlike many other players, was able to adapt so well, and he also has the stamina, which is crazy that he didn't sign up for this tournament. And I was like, I was literally like going against the wall. Like, it wasn't his nickname as well. Like, and there was what a shame. And then I had to go play Jesulin, and that was a already messed up series as well. Like, from, you could tell by the quality of those games that we were like already kind of exhausted, everybody, and he had enough time to rest. And
that was an exhausting couple of 3 games in total, of course, winning 2-1. Jesulin beating you first. He was just on fire that day. He was an anomaly, a tour de force, like from the past almost. Nobody expected it. He was seed 8 in the tournament. But going back to the Talisman situation, of course, I think you could argue, Loveness, that Talisman kind of put one hand on the trophy in this second game when he came back and he counter-sniped you. You sniped his face off in game 1 as Soviets, and he came out in game 2. And I was, as a long-time tournament nerd, I knew what that meant, having never seen Talisman use snipers at an elite level before properly, in big tournaments at least. And then to him counter you, I just thought that all the rest of it, 600,000 views on YouTube and counting, in this huge tournament, I just think that in that best of 3 series, Talisman, and you give him credit, he adapted. In that best of 3, he won. The rest of it, a lot more endurance, fatigue issues for you, of course. The entire best of 9, it goes 8 games in total, can be seen to have won maybe as early as that game 2, where he had the balls to counter you.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention about his flexibility to adapt, like, I started with an like, the meta back then was, I liked it. It was very sniper dependent. And I actually some games I went for a sniper first as Osthair to counter snipe. But suddenly he switched to a 4-con build, which led to huge map control for him. And another game was lost. And that's another great thing. And one thing about Jesulin I will never forget playing him. And he sits like on the opposite side of the table, and I will never forget. Like whenever he screwed up, or I don't know, I did a squad wipe. He was like cursing in
What
Spanish.
what does it sound like to curse in Spanish? What were some of the words you can remember?
I have no idea. Like we had these huge headphones on. Like I couldn't hear it exactly, but I could tell. I could feel like the vibration in the table. He flung his hands in the air.
Were you in the
And
upstairs room? Were you?
yeah, we
Yeah,
were.
that was the loser brackets room, wasn't it? Yeah, and the table was like next to each other. They were opposite each other. I remember, and it's like a wooden acoustic room. So any like tapping on the table would probably have been quite dramatic.
I wouldn't have been surprised if he like threw a can of energy drink at me or something. Like the battle was raging on the battlefield, but there was a second battle.
That's funny about him.
Battle.
That's funny about him.
Yeah, he's so passionate. He's really passionate in those games.
He is, and if you look at him on the poster here, he's such a cutie. He's like in person as well. He's like a really nice, sweet guy. But he's actually, people don't know this. He's actually had a lot of warnings for like raging at people and stuff. Russian players especially. He's really pissed off at Russians in the past.
Yeah, like, he looks like such a nice guy on this poster. But when you play him, it's like nothing of that is left. It's like he's a complete transformation into like
as you rightfully said. I mean, in the ESL era, one of the reasons you were able to get your footing in the tournaments is because Ezulin was kind of took a step back. In 2014, I personally stopped running tournaments because of Hezulin winning everything. It wasn't exciting anymore. So that was that guy.
Definitely his era, yeah.
So he was one of your first big rivals, of course, and then
definitely, I was scared of him.
And then we've got Dev M, which we've touched on in the past with that crazy 4-0 victory in the only best of 7 in big tournament history. GCS2, we've touched on that now. The crazy winning at 3 o'clock in the morning, Talisman becoming the new champion. Yeah. And now we come full circle, of course, with the World Championship 2019, which is kind of Sega and Relic saying, oh, I like this GCS. Let's turn it into a marketing exercise. Marketing exercise. La 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 la. But no, big credit to them. I love the fact that they're supporting us properly. And I might make a joke out of it now, but everyone knows how much we appreciate that. Covered myself.
My jaw dropped when I saw that prize pool. That was
crazy.
That was ridiculous. And I even skipped the previous tournament before that because I was busy with other stuff. But then I saw that prize pool, and there was just I didn't expect that. Like
no.
The prize pool compared to previous prize pools is like what, like huge jump.
Well, there was a lot of people calling you Rust Nest because you didn't play in the Elite Showdown and stuff, and many of Momo's tournaments. I think you didn't play in any of them. Maybe one, I'm thinking. And so, yeah, the World Championship, people didn't know what to think. I think just about the time of the tournament, the seeders who tightrope me, Stern Panther, and Andy, actually, we all set about doing our own independent analysis of everything. And we decided to give you seed 1, but it was a very kind of... We know that Love Nest used to be the man, but we've got Nagorno, Von Asten, they're all pushing. They could... And Jove as well was starting to look like a monster.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your old rival, Dev M. So those 5 guys, in my mind, it could have been anybody to win this tournament, but it really felt like, it ended up just being you and Nagorno in the end, obviously. And that's kind of sounds like so obvious, but it really felt like you guys were going through your opponents in a convincing fashion, especially in the quarterfinals and semis. It just seemed like there was resistance, but you were in control for most of the games. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your journey through that. And of course, it's very easy to highlight you. You start at the top and you work your way again to the top. And we're going to start with Creative Name, who you actually met in the round robin.
Yes.
Oh, no, actually, it wasn't round robin. It was the second round, but on the cast, I've still got it labeled round robin, which is very confusing. Mm-hmm. And talk us through this game and what it represents for the overall tournament. I know we did a little bit of research ourselves, went through the games before this interview, and what's the major talking points here?
I think what is interesting about this year's is that it more or less happened, like the same thing happened in the tourney, in the final against Nagano. Like the builds, the Tiger Doctrine, and my Soviet build. It was almost a mirror match with the final. And I think with this, it kind of shows how much pressure OKW can apply, like in the beginning with the mechanized meta.
Yeah.
And like my VPs, I dropped like 200 VPs or something, and I was barely holding on. But as long as the longer the game progressed, and I kept my unit preservation, I was able like to strike back, because this build, as much as good as it is, it lacks a little bit of utility.
Yeah.
Um, so you don't have like a league or anything like that. You have those light vehicles, which eventually are not as powerful anymore when you can get out like 85 or is this
It almost
and
feels as though it's the SOKW build is not built for Longras, and I was a little bit surprised at the players for utilizing it so much. I mean, it works so well on Faymanville and Kolodny Firma and stuff.
yeah, I
Um,
can imagine that people are just getting used to it. Like it's like almost a drug, like the
yeah,
Panzer II. You like you need it. You like
yeah, yeah.
I can't I can't I can't do a mid or early game without the Panzer II, right? So I think people are just getting used to it.
Yeah, the Panzer II and Puma combo as seen in the OKW launch trailer. It
Mm.
just came to, as you say, it's like an
Oh
addiction.
yeah, it was really it was really accurate, like the trailer
I
that
met, yeah. I ended up
it yeah,
I based
depicted
the
that quite
Stinger
well.
on those two trailers because I was thinking, well, there's the USF launch trailer and there's the OKW launch trailer. I'll just use them to make this tournament Stinger or
Yeah.
like transition video because I can see that's the way the tournament's going. But
Yeah.
interestingly, I think you were quite pivotal in bringing the Soviets back to the fore in this tournament and just
Mm.
re-emphasizing to everybody that, yeah, USF might be able to go toe-to-toe with OKW in the early game, but Soviets have better advantage in the late game. So in these tournaments, obviously, that's where the games often get won, is after the 20 and kind of 30-minute marks.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for me that you kind of prioritize that. But let's go off the the well-trodden tracks and go into the forest of chaos with VonIvan. Let's also have a look at this early game, and I think you had something to remark upon about this, and how you were able to really kind of assess VonIvan in the build-up and then just counter him from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is that Von Ivan played the same maps actually. Like if you look at the, the brackets, he played on the same map before. So and Von Ivan is kind of one of those players who who prepare a certain build and then they execute it. And in this case, it was in my favor because like at first I thought, hey, I didn't play on these maps, and he's like already used to them, especially Kolotny Ferma, which
Yeah.
was the first time I played it. But this time, I just watched his replays. I looked at his capping order, his build, and I just prepared accordingly. And I think that's one of the ways I like it. Like going into a tournament, I don't know who I'm going to play, but as soon as I see the brackets, I can actually like prepare for individual opponents. And yeah, so I went against his Oster build, which is really good.
Mm.
But I just went with the M3 and kept it alive. And he has like no Faust. He has it's just raw DPS basically. He can throw against it.
And this
And
reminds me very much of a situation in GCS 1, wherein you played Helping Hands in the semi final, and USF were not the played faction at that point in time. And
yes,
you used USF to surprise Helping Hands, having practiced them in secret, is that right?
yeah, more or less. Like I thought Hans was doing Ostruppen at that time, and I was like, if I play Soviets, I'm just gonna get mauled by flame half tracks and stuff like that. And back then, it was the old Famenville. It was even more brutal. Like you could lock down
Yeah.
yeah, it was back then. Austria was the meta, and going like light vehicles, and then the Puma and stuff like that. So I just wanted to do something that, yeah, prevents this this
Yeah.
fate. So I went with U.S. forces, and U.S. forces tend to do well against like Osttruppen and stuff. So
Certainly.
yeah, so I went with this approach, and
So that
it's good. Also, it helps to keep the meta fresh for yourself.
certainly.
Something I learned when playing Talisman is that I should not go into a tournament with a set of strategies, predetermined strategies. I want to adapt on the fly as I go.
Well, Jeslin in that same GCS2 tournament did a great job of that, keeping everything fresh and surprising people. And I've seen
Mm,
it work time and time again. But I would then argue, because you're so good at organizing your strategies, that the having the brackets in advance in this tournament, not generated on the day and everything on the fly, multiple
mm,
matches. In this case, having time to also see your matches, the maps that the matches were on, and the opponents in advance. It was a distinct advantage for your kind of preparation. I would say it's a slight failing of perhaps the design of the tournament, which is my failing. That Kolodny was played a couple of times in a row for people, and people did have a few repeats here and there.
yeah.
So maybe that's something we could look at in the future for certain. Um, Going on though, I mean, let's get into the semi-final against Jove. I mean, there was the match against Aimstrong that we don't have that on YouTube, but again, that we can actually talk about that. Loveness, that was very much a case of again preparation beating lack of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know where I developed this attitude to just like do my homework for this kind of stuff. I think during university, I just for exam, I just go into the library and then learned that stuff until I got the hang of it. But it's kind of the same attitude for these games. Like I look at what my opponents are doing, and then I break out my notepad and write down what I'm going to do against it. And with Aimstrong, it was bit easier because he has a very distinct play style, a very unique one as well. And yeah, so I knew exactly what I was going to face, and I prepared accordingly. There was some yeah, and he played very like his individual playstyle with the half track, for example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's something like if you see that in auto match, you can tell it's aim strong. It's definitely aim
You
strong.
certainly could, and you actually spotted a Smurf of his in the build-up to the tournament just because of his play style. It was an obvious tell, and were able to assess his strategy he was trying to build up to play against you. I only bring up this series. I know we just jumped back to the round of 16 from the
Mm.
quarterfinals. My bad, but it again was another example of strategy and pre-organization of said strategy. So let us now go into the semi-final versus Jove, and we've picked out we're going to play a bit of this game, but just talk us through how you were able to beat this guy 3-0.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't expect that outcome. Like Jove was extremely strong. He knocked out Devim 3-0. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. What I knew was that I played on Nexus before, and yeah, so I went with OKW because they tend to do better on these open maps.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I didn't even know what build he was going for, but since we had technical difficulties setting up his screen sharing,
Yeah.
we actually had to replay the same game like 3 or 4 times.
That's interesting. I'll just go back to the early game. What Loveness is referring to here is, as I say,
So we had exactly the same engagement 4 times in a row, and he did an M3, and like when we restarted the game finally and for the last time, he suddenly didn't go for an M3 anymore and did a weird build order and capping order that I didn't expect. So there was a little mind game from him. I'm not entirely sure if it worked out though. With like the M3 is just it's kind of you should go for it if you already opt for a penal build.
Certainly,
Um,
because you always were going to get that Panzer Fusilier, and he's kind of a useful squad against multiple target types. So it wasn't
yeah,
as
yeah,
though you were suddenly with a Rakettenwerfer you didn't want or something.
yeah.
Let's jump to the late game though. I'm very intrigued as to how you would assess that you were able to beat Soviets against a very top level player. Is it just Jove's kind of build order and
Yeah, I personally think while the penal tier one build is very powerful, it kind of, just look at his unit composition. He's got like a lots of basic squads. He's got a captured MG, but he doesn't really have that tier two variety like a Zisgun and stuff like that. So the Tiger kind of counters the KV2, and yeah, so it's actually nice playing against this. Like you don't have to fear any Ziz or any Maxim, and yeah, I think it's a weakness of this particular build, which makes you gives you an advantage in the early game with the M3, or in this case he didn't go for one, but I would say that it has issues in the late game.
Fair enough. And talking of issues in the late game, Jove again with another Soviet builder, this time the KV-8. Similar situation again, Love Nest?
Yeah, this time he went for conscripts and he did well in the early game. Like I like to play this myself, like with your conscripts hiding behind sandbags, and you have to run into these and take manpower losses and stuff. So he did well. There was one crucial engagement which kind of decided the how this game was going to flow, which was when the T-70 hit the field. And unlike my Soviet build, uh, Jove doesn't go for guards, so he has 4 conscripts. But when the T-70 hits the field, he doesn't really have much to protect it, right? So I built the Puma, like what we are seeing right now. I went for the Puma, and I went for the T-70 immediately. Like you guys were joking on the cast. I rewatched that.
Yes, yeah.
You were like, "Oh, he's going for a Puma." Oh no, he doesn't. He goes for the Panzer II, right? So because we were already at the stage, we were quite late. I was like, he's got 4 conscripts. He has to go for a T-70. He absolutely has to. And yeah, so I straight went in, got the T-70, and also an engineer wipe, and that's where the tables have been turned a little bit. And he lost a lot of, actually quite dramatically, he lost a lot of map control and VPs, and you could tell by the end of the game that he was a little bit desperate for VPs.
So there you go. That it was kind of delayed, but the Puma choice was solid and it countered the T-70, and it's just kind of obvious stuff, but in the kind of context of such a big game, it's this correct decision making time and time again that's going to give you that kind of advantage. And then as we discussed, Love Nest's Tiger Grand Defense build is just countering what Joe's going for in this particular case. But as Love Nest mentions, won in the early game, and that's a kind of pattern in these elite games. If you keep your early game advantage, having gained it, you can, if you stay on top of things and you keep away from bad engagements that give you bullshit RNG, you can just see games out. It just takes a while. That's all.
Yeah.
And let's go into the grand finals then, Love Nest, and let's start with your first game against Nagorno on Longris. What I think this is probably game of the tournament for me, because the stakes are high, the game's great, and it's just 2 players going at it. Tell us what you remember about this game.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's similar to the one I had versus Creative Nine, but already if you look at the VPs, the pressure Nagano applies. Like he really had me locked down. Like I was actually fearing that I would run out of VPs before I could do my Soviet late game
Yeah.
yeah, power struggle. And I actually lost a lot of squads as well. Like my unit preservation that game was kind of bad, and I thought I definitely would lose this game. But yeah, like it all changed with these crazy engagements with
Yeah.
the Puma and the Su-85, which survived, and getting the Tiger eventually. Yeah, it was a hell of a series. That
Really
was really
felt like Nagorno got quite desperate towards the end, and the Soviet juggernaut just took hold. I remember there was like a sandbag wipe that you performed, and then it killed his Obersoldaten or something like that. It was a cracking game, but the desperation, by the late game, if we just jump to that, having you regained your advantage and dominated the center for so long, you've really felt like Nagorno was frustrated at that time. Let's jump. Let's swap factions and now go to you playing as OKW and Nagorno as the mighty Soviets. This was a much more different game. I think because of Nagorno's Soviet build with the Dushkas, it felt very grindy.
Yeah.
What led to the outcome of this one?
I think he also switched. I never seen him play this doctrine before, so Nagano is definitely crafty and by like pumping out different strategies that people are not used to. He did the same in game 3. Was it game 3? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
it was. So we're going to go on to that in a second.
And this is a whole different like Soviet build compared to mine, like tier 1 with Dishkas, and yeah, it was really good. And he actually got an early wipe for me. Like he's good. Like I planted a mine for this for SM3, and he barely passed it.
I remember that. Yes, that was on the left side. I remember that. It went just around it. Well, we can't find it right now, but
yeah. So I actually went for a battle group build, unlike mechanized, because of the reasons I mentioned earlier with not having proper indirect fire and stuff. But he locked down those VPs really really good, and the 6-man Dishka crew was just I don't know, like I never really touched the right VP, and I thought I could eventually win this game, but I ran out of VPs, which
Yeah.
was yeah.
They ground you down. The Soviets did over time. Now, is there any units you could have gone for differently? Perhaps were you happy? I know you were happy with your tier 1 build and trying to gain control. You certainly have 2 victory points thanks to the flak off track at this point in time. But by the late game, in hindsight, is there any unit composition, build order decisions you might have chosen differently?
It's very hard to say. I actually thought that maybe going Oster would have been better, because I don't. To be honest, I didn't know. It's probably the execution. Like, I think the build that I done was good with the flares and the LEIG and the Tiger. Oh, that was so unfortunate that I lost that
Yep.
tank, because it really set me back again and like gave him the chance to get rid of the rest of my VPs. So I think it was just the execution, and yeah, the build I would have done it again. Maybe
Yeah.
not lose.
I mean,
my
you
stuff.
losing that Jagdpanzer 4 there and then a second one. But as I say, Nagorno with the Katusha as well, he's got good counters out. And his SU...
Look at his unit composition. It's like he's got everything.
Perfect, isn't it? Yeah, SU-85 is gaining vet. Importantly, your Jagdpanzer's now down as well. So the tank destroyer battle's getting won. And oh, dear.
Yeah, and actually, with the Jagdpanzer, I had a chance to come back, but it was already too late.
Fair enough. So this is a really grindy game, and now we go into a bit of a breath of fresh air and a big compliment, of course, for Nagorno in this one. I mean, talk about his build and the balls it takes to do something like this in a big grand final.
I was like, hey, where is Rifleman? I don't see them anywhere. And but if you think about it, it's quite smart. Like, he gets the 50 cals way sooner, and he locks down the buildings in the center, and going mechanized and not having like a lot of map control, you have a hard time like coming back from this. And yeah, I did the mistake going Raketten against the Jeep, because that further set me back. Like,
yes, yeah. But it's such a difficult premise to be up against. A familiar, well, in Company Heroes 1, it was 4 Pyos or 4 NGs. And as you say, getting an anti-tank gun against that, you're going to lose map control. And certainly that's what we saw happen, especially with the Raketten getting harassed like we just saw there. But yeah, it was a fantastic win for Nagorno. You've pretty much pinned it down, and that now obviously puts the series in his favor. He's 1 game away from final victory, and we find ourselves in this crossroads game. This time you're as Soviets. Any memories from this one?
Yeah, I was surprised that he went for Oster. I almost think that he was a little bit too overconfident. Like,
okay.
So I'm quite comfortable with my Soviets. So I was actually glad I had the opportunity to do this, do the classic 4 cons against Oster, which works quite
even
well.
up to 5 at this point, and sort of classic kind of Company Heroes 2 battle. And as I say, I think you might be right there. Nagorno may have gotten overconfident with his builds. What's the defining moment you really felt like you'd toppled him and leveled up the series in this one?
Yeah, it's most likely because he, with this doctrine, very very powerful, the 5-man grants, but you're kind of stuck with the P4s unless you want to tech up, which you usually never see. So I think with the SU-85 and the IS-2, he has a hard time dealing with this kind of stuff. So that's actually a reason why I don't really like this doctrine, is that you're limited in the late game. But he did quite well either way. Like, he was very very mobile with his P4s, and yeah, he certainly did good.
It did well. It felt like he could have pulled off some. It's almost as though it's a frustrating game as a fan. Just to watch Nagorno have these mobile tanks and never be able to pull off this ultra VonIvan style all-in attack with the fragmentation bomb at the exact right time. He kind of half did it once, he half did it twice, but you were easily able to defend it. Maybe all those years of playing VonIvan's kind of built up your defensive capabilities. We've got moments like this where he's trying, and I think he...
Oh, yeah, that was also crazy. Like, the T-70 just in time got the last shot of on the before he got
Oh,
destroyed. Like it was carnage.
that's epic. I can't even remember this stuff. As I was saying to you before, I've kind of like got PTSD with casting. I forget everything in between tournaments.
Yeah.
IS2 survives. That's the moment the game's won pretty much. The IS2 surviving, and he wasn't able to execute the mega push, unfortunately for him.
I mean, look at this unit composition. He still has like everything he needs. I mean, well, now he loses the P4, but still, like I don't really have much left. But the vehicle crew, I should do like a shout out to this ability, which kind of saved me. I mean, this is the vehicle crew repair.
All the time you're microing and your vehicle's repairing itself.
Yes, it's such a good ability. That's a reason why I could never play another Doctrine without this ability. And luckily, it's on two of my favorite commanders.
That's fantastic. And then, as I say, you've killed the Panzer IV, and then the IS-2's back, nearly back and ready for battle. Its main gun's almost put back on. There it is. It just jumps back on. All like, bit of Viagra for you there, you know, a bit of spearhead doctrine, blue pill kind of thing. So that's ready again. As I say, you've got the dominant situation. Now then, let's just head into this properly, and let's talk us a little bit through this fifth game of the grand final, and what you're thinking going into it, and then obviously what happens.
Yeah, so Nagorno had faction choice. He had VP lead, and I was certain he was going to pick allies because allies won every single game so far in this series. I want to just point that out because I saw comments like, "Oh, allies OP." I think that they are not OP. I think people are more comfortable with them.
Yeah.
They're less fragile, I'd say, but they're certainly not OP, and especially on Fayetteville, you can like box in allies quite well. So yeah, I was surprised that he went for KW. So I could go with my trusty Soviets. That was yeah. So I was prepared to go Austria though. Like I was actually surprised by this choice. But yeah, I don't know. Like I pulled myself together for this last game, and I really wanted to like deliver and actually win this. And yeah, it went quite well for me, like from the start.
It just seemed like, as you say, it went well from you from the start, and it never looked like it was going to go away. You're certainly a performer on the biggest stages. You've got like a cool head when when a lot of people get stressful, they become like deer in the headlights, and the adrenaline has an adverse effect on them. It seems like when there's a lot of money on the line, you're quite a cool customer in that regard. Anything in your life that you can point out, or have you ever analyzed this attribute of yourself, and made you, what makes you feel like you're able to do this?
I don't know. I think I think it's like a couple of factors. It sounds weird talking about myself.
No, it's fine. You
This,
don't
but
sound arrogant. Trust me. Just go ahead.
I'm just I don't know. I never I never try to blame the game for mistakes like RNG and stuff where you get like tilted. Some other players are kind of having this problem. They play really well, but then like something unfortunate happens and they start like blaming the game. And yeah, I just try to play it cool and call like I don't know. Yeah, I think it's like some of these factors they certainly help. And yeah, I think it's just a like I don't know, like a healthy attitude towards the game and yourself.
Might even be your upbringing. Maybe if I think your parents are very supportive of your craft. They watch the tournaments. They make quips about other players. Well, they were saying this player doesn't seem very cool headed and stuff like that. So having a supportive family and people that give you the values you need, it kind of sets you up for life, and it's kind of one of those unobtainable attributes that will piss people off to hear, but it's probably true. Being having a cool head probably stems from childhood and all sorts.
Yeah, my parents were like making fun of me because they like back when I was in school, I was like playing in the middle of the night and like try to put something at the door so they can't see the light coming from the screen and stuff. and they were like, oh, if we knew you were going to play in these tournaments, we would have never done that. Just kidding. They would still do it. But yeah, it's fun. And like back then they used to watch my handball games, and no, they are watching
Handball.
cartoons.
That was the answer to all of my questions, Loveness. Thank you. It's handball. All those years playing handball as a teen. It's finally come to fruition. The hand-eye coordination, the calmness under pressure, the desire for victory.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I can't really pinpoint this to anything. It's just
I mean, going back to tactics, of course, and asking you less cringeworthy questions. Of course, the MG swap, the Maxim usage in this game, pinning him down, it kind of psychologically messes him up. And then finally, the Stern Pioneer dying on retreat. It just felt like psychologically this guy had had enough. Maybe he was feeling tired also. But, it seemed like you wanted it more at this point.
Yeah, and what surprised me is that I could actually afford the Maxim, because usually you bleed a lot of with conscripts and stuff, you can't really afford it. But this time, I have such a healthy unit composition, and it was fun playing with this. Like I had the Maxim in the building, I had him cut off, I could plant mines everywhere, and I felt like he was like, oh shit, like, and now I'm a little bit boxed in. I
Yeah,
lost the
yeah.
squad already, so I could already feel that he was a little bit disheartened.
It felt
And
like it. Well, your KD at this point was positive compared to OKW, and you were playing with Soviets, so it was basically a complete manhandling of him for whatever reasons or excuses he might have. I can put as many positives in your column as well. It seemed like a nice kind of way to put a punctuation mark on the tournament for yourself. You know, it was a comprehensive victory, and certainly now people would say you deserved the prize money, and it's a hell of a lot of money to have.
yeah.
$10,000. What are you going to do with it?
Ooh, that's a good. Well, I'm in the process of moving, and so it definitely comes in handy. Some, but I don't really have a like a I don't really have a thing that I want to invest it in. I just
No,
wanna, I just but they will certainly come in handy for like a little dive trip, or maybe even a car. I don't know.
that would be
So
nice. Yeah.
uh,
So, are you moving for work, for love
yeah,
life?
yeah, I'm moving for work, and so yeah, I'm gonna yeah, like all of these things.
That'd be nice. Will we ever see Love Nest 1v1 stream again?
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, I'm planning to do one actually next week. So
Well, that's
yeah.
exciting. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Will it be from the new gaff, or is that that
No,
to
no,
come?
no. The new apartment will be like in January or something like this.
Oh, fair enough. So
But yeah, but I don't know like how full-time work and company fears tourneys, and I'm not sure like if I actually want to
the
play.
thing is that you say this, and everybody tends to say this, and I'm the ultimate in trying to drag people back in. I've been quite successful in that. But the residual skill you have, it's not as hard to maintain. I think you've proved that in the past couple of years. You know, you've already done the hard work to become the best player in the world. So
Yeah, you gotta keep the war machinery oiled though.
yeah, but
Certainly have to put practice in and stuff. But
what about the
yeah, as I
romance
said,
of like raising the war machine from a lake and it's been buried for 50 years and like cleaning it down and getting it ready for combat once more? Maybe
yeah,
we could see
yeah,
a bit of that in the future.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm just glad that I won this tournament, and that I focus on other things as well. But I certainly wanna like, when you play these tournaments and they accumulate in the victory, like this is I sometimes have a hard time like enjoying the fun side of
Yeah,
CoH2.
yeah.
Like it's something like, hey, why don't you stream like a 4v4? And I don't know, this is like I can't really describe it that well, but I think you get
I say that to everybody when they complain about DevM and now possibly yourself as like mercenary cash grab tournament players. It's bullshit. If you've played in a tournament and you've had that glory and that adrenaline, why you would not get enjoyment from playing a 4v4? It's
And it's not to be like arrogant or anything, because you can invest this time probably way better. The 5,000 hours or 4,000 hours I have in this game, you can, I don't know, like go on dates and do other things, and put the work into your education or whatnot. But this is hard work, and people feel like cash grab. When I hear this word like cash grab Devon, that's not true. Devon has invested so much time into the series, and
Mm.
he has benefited the development process and everything. So I feel this is kind of unfair saying something.
And people don't fully appreciate the impact of top level players such as yourself and others on the game, because of course the game gets developed around how the game is played. It's like an ecosystem of skill and an effort. And I think from all of us, big thanks and congratulations to yourself for all your efforts throughout the years, and then continuing so hopefully in the future too, for making our competitive scene have a championship player. You're now the guy associated, especially in the last 3 years, as being the man. I mean, Talisman's had his time, so has DevM, but you've been a consistent force and the constant kind of finalist for what it is. So long may it continue, but congratulations and thanks once again. And any parting words for the people watching this interview?
I was really touched by the amount of support and the messages I got, like when the cast was done, like popping all these Steam messages and like all these congratulations. That was really touching, and I absolutely love it. And also thanks to everybody, like my family watching these games.
Yeah.
It's like that is absolutely crazy. And my brother who explained what was going on street on the screen. That's cool, and really appreciate.
Oh, so he
that.
like narrated it for them. That's cool.
It's just nice, and it feels good. And I'm definitely staying in touch with everything, but I have to like let things settle down a bit.
And I'm sure they will. We can't keep we'll be doing another tournament probably like this next year, so there's plenty of time to get on with IRL. But until then, for all you tournament fans and for the wider community as well, thanks from me, and I'm thanking Loveness once again this time for the interview, and I'm sure he'll see you again real soon, and so will I. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.